so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Museum Administration Roundtable. My name is Addison Field. I'm the Chief Curator of the Alaska State Museum, coming to you from Tlingit-Ani in downtown Juneau, the unceded lands of the Occoquan. And the intent of this session here this morning, well, initially I'd hoped that we'd all be in a big room and I would physically have a round table. And we would all be sitting around a round table, and we could bring these agenda items up and talk about them as a group. Obviously, we can't do that today, but hopefully we can look forward to that in future conferences. So the intent here this morning is to discuss issues of common concern for directors and administrators of museums, cultural centers, historic sites, and organizations. And I hope that we'll be able to swap ideas and share solutions for some of the challenges that we're facing in our highly specialized work, the highly specialized work that we do. I've added the agenda items in the WOVA chat. Looks to me like maybe there's also a Zoom chat. I'll try and pull those over and into the Zoom chat as well shortly. Maybe after I get the first topic for discussion started. And I'd like to thank everybody who has taken some time prior to the session to send me agenda items. We have 4. Like I said, I'll post those in the other chat. But our first topic for discussion today is staff motivation. With everybody worn out by the stresses of COVID-19 and bleak budgets, does anyone have any tools or wisdom to share about keeping staff motivated and positive in the face of uncertainty and constant change? This question came to us from Anita Maxwell in Ketchikan. I didn't see Anita on the list yet this morning, but maybe she'll come through. Has anybody experienced staff? Are you here, Anita?
I am here. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see you. Yeah, so I mean, obviously we've all had, I think we all have that similar common ground of from which we work, and we have, we come together, we look at our strategic plan, we reprioritize. Just for some context, we have Ketchikan Museums has 2 museums. We have the Tongass Historical Museum, we have the Totem Heritage Center. We did lose 1 program assistant position due to staff cuts. We're hopeful to fight for that position back for next year's budget. So there's 8 of us between 2 facilities, and so we come together to celebrate birthdays and anniversaries and pizza lunches and all those little things where in the time of COVID you're probably not supposed to do, but we're a small vaccinated masked staff, so coming together just to try to get those energies and really trying to, I think the staff has done a fabulous job of trying to support each other above and beyond our own little silos, right? So if collections needs some extra help, programs digs in. If programs needs help, because they're staffed at the Heritage Center, we'll work on a Saturday or a Sunday, whatever it takes. So yeah, just putting it out to the group of if you guys have had some, success in really just regrouping, coming back together, and what has worked for all of you. So thank you for your ideas.
Anybody want to wade in?
I can share something.
Go ahead.
So here at Chickaloon, I am a master of 1 in cultural resources when it comes to collections, but I'm part of a greater group of staff members that deal with cultural resources. I just happen to do with the physical stuff. One of the things that we've done is over COVID, I would say over the last year and a half, we were given like care packages, and they were really simple. Like we got like a little bag of like tea, and I think there was like a salve in there. And then most recently, we actually got a book about how to handle stress. It's actually been really good. I don't normally buy these kind of books, but it's actually been really helpful. We even got a tabletop kind of happy light. So I think for us, like knowing that our department director really cares about us and is always checking in on us. I think the other thing that we recently did, which I really liked, because like I said, I'm a person of one, we have done tours of the work that we do. So I've taken a tour with our culture interpretive guides to show like what they do. I've shown the collections. My husband, who happens to be our travel response coordinator, who deals more with brownfield site land rehabilitation, has talked about his stuff. So it really has allowed us to get to know the work that each of us does. And I think for that, it's been really helpful because I work in a very big supportive capacity since I do manage the archives here. So I've now been able to see how maybe I can help some of the other staff members in the work that they're doing that maybe they didn't realize that there's a connection. So I definitely think if you have the opportunity, have your staff reach out to one another, like schedule a time where everybody can kind of go and tour someone's work or workspace. It really helped for me just kind of understanding their needs and them, same thing with me. Just because you're so busy in the thick of it, you don't actually get a chance to see what other people's work really is from day to day. And I think that helps, that kind of really puts up a wall between staff members. And I think it was really nice knowing that everybody else is just as stressed as I am and needs a lot of help and support. So that would be my recommendation.
Addison? Can you hear me? It's Patty.
Yep, Patty, we can hear you.
Thank you, Selena. I actually like your care packages idea. When we were in the midst of, we're all multitasking. We are, my communications and marketing manager is on the front counter. My business manager is on the front counter. We're all helping everybody, and it's helping everybody is the only way a small and mid-sized organization can survive. The thing is that we are, we're not in full operation, so we're down 4 people. So there's 6 of us doing the work of the other 4 people as well. What I found that has been helpful, and we are burned out. What I found that has been helpful is that during our weekly staff meeting, before we get down to business, we do a roundtable on how are you? It's like, how are you doing? Not anything related to the museum at all. And that has worked out. And it reminded me that I haven't done that in the last couple of meetings. I've just gotten right back to business. And I thought, ooh, I better start doing that again, because the summer is over and we're just burned out. So I really think that has helped, doing a touch base with, just talk specifically about your own personal how are you, and not about your work related how are yous.
Addison, this is Amy Steffi, and we did something, Patty's talking reminded me of something we did at the Alutiiq Museum, and that is because we tightened our staff and, you know, we had some turnover in staff and we had to fill roles, we actually went back to everybody's job description and we looked at what they were doing and we reevaluated their titles, and we talked to our staff members about the title they've had and the title they aspired to, if there was a way we could update the title. And I actually promoted a couple people to managers because they were actually doing the managerial work. And even though, you know, I couldn't assign more money to it, I was able to acknowledge the role they were playing by updating their title to something that was more accurate. The other thing that that April, our wonderful director, did was that after vaccines had been widely available and our staff was, I think, 100% vaccinated, and, you know, everybody had gotten sick from the vaccination and had to take personal time off, she basically said if we would share our vaccination status with her, she would give everybody 4 hours of paid time off. So that cost the organization a little bit of something, but it was a nod to the fact that by getting vaccinated, but by stepping up to help, that was actually helping the managerial team keep the museum going and help keep everybody safe in our space. And I thought it was a lovely gesture.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, I'll say here at the State Museum, State Library and Archives and Museum, we've done some similar things, being a little more relaxed about some of our normal policies and procedures, and hopefully allowing people to take the foot off the pedal just a little bit helps reduce some of that stress, but also really tightening up, I would say, the things that that we're working on, and staying focused on the priorities that we set, and not trying to be like that cat chasing the laser level, right? There's so much out there we could chase at the moment, but really trying to decide which topics we want to work on a monthly and a quarterly basis, and focus on those. Anyone else have any other ideas for staff motivation? I'm going to count to 6 in my head. And if we don't hear anything, we can transition to our...
Did you want to talk? If we can't hear you if you are talking, so you might need to use the chat if that's the case. I think she might be typing. Yep. So you increased the amount of staff meetings you had so that people could see each other more? Okay. Mm-hmm. Were they group projects for work, or were they group projects like art? Okay. So you made your staff meetings a little more social than usual. Nice.
That's a huge one. Talk about a source of stress. Just that unknown, people not realizing what's going on, everybody knowing budgets are terrible, but not understanding any of that is just horrible for people. So I'm sure that communication is hugely helpful. Yeah, well, that's good too. Money's good. All right. Well, we're at about 10:15, so it would be a good time to transition. Is there anybody who has any other input they'd like to provide with regards to this question about staff motivation?
I just want to check. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I just figured it out. Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's go ahead and transition to our second topic for discussion. And this is loosely entitled Museums as Business. With increased pressure on organizational budgets due to loss of revenue and other factors, some administrators have reported increased pressure to operate more like a business. Has anyone experienced those pressures? In what form? And how have you responded?
Hey, Addison, that was my topic. Can I
Go for it, Patty.
You bet. Museums function to preserve, present, interpret our heritage materials, our cultural materials, our valuable human stories. And while that's nice, and that's why we exist according to the IRS, and our 501c3 status says that we're an educational institution, I have found that my local elected officials are more interested in businesses. And yes, we are in the business of museums, and that we do generate revenues, although some, it's there is the philosophy that museums should be free. That's a challenge for us. And we are economic drivers. As a matter of fact, my little museum here brings $1.6 million of revenues back into our community. When we are fully functioning, we have 10 employees. So there's jobs in the economy. I find today, now more than ever, and I'm also a quasi-government nonprofit. So 75% of my operating budget comes from the city of Valdez. I'm putting it out there just in a form of conversation, in a form of suggestion, in a form of, well, what do you all feel about that? Yeah, we're a museum, but we're also a business. I'm looking for feedback on how I'm writing my annual report right now.
Patty, I think I've always operated as a business because we, we do budgets and we project revenue and we project, what we're going to be then. I think we're a business that zeroes out at the end of the year kind of idea, but I try to also put some stuff into savings or into the endowment. So I would say that, yes, you're a nonprofit business and diversification of revenue is part of it, and making sure that you've got proper, regulations covered. I mean, you're doing a lot of things that are essential for a business. You just have some of the rules and regulations that you have to follow are a little different than a for-profit, but you are a business. So,
is your issue, Patty, convincing your local government that you are a business? Do they just not see you that way?
Oh, we're considered a community service organization. So, yes. And I just want to I'm just putting it out there in that we're a business. And I always say, no, we're in the museum business together. And that's the other topic I always bring up to my council is that the city of Valdez owns our collections, our 80,000 plus piece collection, everything from a diary to fire engines and trucks and such like that. So, and the nonprofit is charged with preserving in public trust these collections. But we are in the business of in the museum business, and I'm going to move forward with that conversation, and I have for the last 10 years and probably will continue for the next 10 years. So anyway, yeah, so we're responsible for our collections, but we are in the museum business.
Patty, here at the State Museum this year, I guess, for maybe the last, several decades, we have we have staffed our front desk in a certain way, right? And I would call it was a very museum business way, right, where we brought in people to work in the summer, and we almost consider them part of our normal regular staff, and we had them do work all around the building when they weren't on the front desks and things of that nature. And then after COVID, we were asked to staff our desks differently, and essentially now we're doing it more like by using like temp employees, something that is that would be in a that it would be not be out of place in a in a shop downtown. And that was really tough for us as a group. We had a really hard time adjusting to that at first, and we're still in the process of changing our structures so that we can operate in the way that that we've been asked to operate those front desks. And I guess like you, we're also we're a state facility, and we are not the most nimble or flexible organization out there. And in fact, I'd say we're far from it. I guess so. Lesson learned from that is, I could see this coming, a year ago, and we tried very hard to do what we were, asked to do, but we were prepared when it didn't work as well as we would have hoped. So, yeah.
Can I follow up with that one statement you made about goods and services and items that you were selling in your store? Do your local for-profit retailers believe that you were competing with them? Because there is that as well. Yeah, I see Selena shaking her head. Yes. So we have to be really careful that we don't sell goods from what the prospector's selling or what Rogues or anybody else is selling. So, and those are items that might actually be of interest to sell. So there is because we are a nonprofit and sort of a quasi-city entity, we have to be very careful of what we sell. Do you have that challenge?
Here, Selena was shaking her head. I can't see her, but maybe she has something to say. Yeah.
So, Patty, I had a lot of the questions and stuff you were asking and dealing with. I had all of those issues when I was director at Palmer. So we had one very large, successful business in Palmer that felt the museum gift store was competing. So the first few years I played nice and I made sure I did not carry the product that they had. And then I changed the way the gift store was. I really looked at the museum, the stories we were telling. We also asked questions of our visitors on the kind of stuff they were looking for. So we vamped everything over and started selling more native jewelry, artwork from local artists, and then things that really kind of brought out some of the things in our collection. So mining stuff. I think we had some like outdoor stuff because we had a lot of outdoor people that like to go hiking. And then I started noticing the product I was carrying was magically appearing in their store. So that's when I just kind of said, okay, hands off, I'm going to get whatever I want. And I think what helped kind of smooth the waters over was, yeah, we're a business. I mean, that was always at the back of my mind that the Palmer Museum was a business, but first and foremost, we're a cultural organization that serves the community. And I always thought of everything we did that way. And one of the things that our board was really wanting to do was to get our face out there in recognition that the museum was there for the community, to preserve the history and culture of Palmer. So we started formatting and structuring our events and fundraisers to reflect that. And I always knew, same thing, have to report back to the city. They want to see their money's paying off. They want to see profits coming in. So I framed it in a different way. We made enough to balance that at the end of the year. We barely ever really made a big profit. But the one thing we did do is we supported the economy in downtown Palmer. So an example would be, we never had a major fundraiser. So we created this wine walk. And we actually structured it off of, I think it was I think there's a wine walk in Valdez, or it's Valdez or Cordova. But anyhow, we structured it that way where we were making the money from all of the ticket sales, but we partnered with businesses in downtown Palmer during the summer for one day, and they would host the wine pours. But by doing that, people were shopping in their stores. And what ended up happening was we were making a huge fundraiser once a year, and the stores were making sales almost equivalent to what the holidays were for them, which was huge in the summertime. And that way, we weren't necessarily stealing business. We were giving them business, but we're still making money. So it was kind of a really nice balance. And that was just an example. And I'm not at the Palmer Museum anymore, but they still do that wine walk tour. I actually went on it this year, and it sells out every year. And there's businesses now that like hound the museum because they want to be a wine walk stop. So I think when you're being a business, I think it's really about reaching out to the other businesses in your town and figuring out a good partnership you can have without having to sacrifice your mission and your ethics in doing so. I think the other thing is I was always really diligent about numbers. I mean, I was tracking visitor statistics, how many buses. If I noticed a new face was popping up because they found out because of something we did, I wrote all that crap down and I reported it every month when I had to report to city council. And I think they finally started understanding that, yes, we weren't bringing in money into our coffers, but we were bringing in money into the town in indirect ways. So I made it a point to be at every frickin' city event, every time, always plugging the museum. Anytime we did something that brought people in, I wasn't even shameful about it. I was like, yeah, this is because of the museum. And I think it really got the public to understand in the community that, okay, the museum brings in people. The museum does these things that support other things. And I think that's maybe where you need to kind of place yourself, insert yourself. I mean, because as we know, small museums in some of these communities that are funded by the city governments, they don't see that. They don't see the things that we do really better the community. It's really hard to kind of show physical proof that you're improving the community's like well-being, the economy overall. So I really feel like that's something that like I had to do. I'm so grateful I don't have to do it anymore. So I really feel for you, Patty, because I remember how stressful.
Actually, I do that already. Actually, I'm anyway. And your wine rock came from Kate Goodrow and our Gold Rush Days girls. So
yeah, it's amazing.
Yes, I'm very familiar
with
all of the efforts of a small museum director. Yeah.
I also found expanding partnerships with other art organizations so that they're kind of singing your praises for you. So you don't have to do that was also really beneficial. Nice. So helping out I'm sure you already do it right now, but doing it more so where they're helping to promote you guys.
Our arts organization is just defunct from the COVID, but yes, thank you.
I was hoping to share something if I could with Patricia's question or her topic. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
I'm Melissa. I'm coming from Kodiak. I work at the Kodiak History Museum since April. And this is my first time ever working for a nonprofit. I usually work with international businesses to work with strategy, marketing, scaling, things like that. So when I came on to be the development director, I came on with a complete business mindset and something that I think is worth noting. So I'd like to give something to think about and then maybe a couple of actionable things to follow up is that for me, business isn't inherently a bad thing. And I think once we accept that and we really claim that idea as okay, we can kind of gravitate towards best business practices. And I'm finding that if the goals of the museum are clearly and strategically planned and executed, and by that I mean supporting our community, growing our community, benefiting our community, then the business end where we're profiting, healthily profiting, works well. So a couple things that I did is we have a store and we pivoted a little bit, just like with trying not to compete with other businesses, even though that is a business model, you want to compete. Being that we're a nonprofit, we wanted to play nicely and support our local neighbors. So one of the things I did was reached out to local artists that I noticed were carried in other shops. And I brought them in the hopes of encouraging them and helping them and sharing an hour or two mentoring them, and then asking them if we could collaborate for something that would be more exclusive to our store. And most people were really excited. In fact, everyone that we asked is really excited about that opportunity to have something exclusive in the museum shop. And then we do our part and we share those artists that are in other businesses with people that come through. And then the second thing real quick is something to think about doing. When we have pop-ups, we allow people to come to the lawn. They have the opportunity to sell produce, fresh produce, or handmade goods right on the premises. We don't charge them for the space outside, but we are asking them for a small donation that we're putting together. And what we do is we utilize that as kind of a threshold or a gateway to a fundraiser that we're doing. And people have the opportunity to get a big basket as a raffle or something. And so in a small scale, what we try to do is outwardly, we are committed and support local businesses as we realize that we have to support ourselves. So those are just some of my thoughts. And again, I'm new to this whole process of being a nonprofit, but I do want to advocate that having a profit mindset can be a great way to teach other businesses how to practice with more integrity and heart.
Good conversation, all. Thanks.
So we're at 10:33. It's a good time to transition. Is there anybody else who has any additional quick thoughts for Patty on this topic?
Just one final topic. The retail experience and the IRS nonprofit, you have to really be careful that you do sell items. Otherwise, you are liable for UBIT. That's the business. You might be taxed. So you do have to definitely sell items that are related to your mission. I'm done.
Right. Okay, let's go ahead and transition to our next topic. Third topic for discussion: online versus daily operations. The pandemic shutdowns have led to an increased need, desire, and expectation for online content and presence from our organizations. How are organizations juggling online presence while maintaining daily operations? And this question came in from Bethany. Bethany, are you here? Did you want to mention anything?
I don't see her.
Don't see her. All right. Well, does anybody else have any thoughts on this online versus daily operations situation that we seem to be in?
I want to know if anybody's making any money on online offerings, because we're not.
No, we made an online store too, and we don't. I mean, sometimes every now and then I sell something. It's fine, and we didn't know exactly how it was going to work when I first did it. But yeah, we also have a virtual tour on there too, so people can take a tour of the museum without coming in. We weren't really sure about that one either. So, but we get a lot of people asking us who did our website and that it's really great. I guess that's good. Anyway. Yeah.
I'm talking about not just the store, but I'm talking about like online workshops, online Zoom, online videos, online tutorials, online skill stuff, all that stuff that you would have made a little bit of revenue on if they would have came in to the museum.
Nope.
Well, we found it more as a marketing vehicle, the online stuff, the little tidbits, and then the people in town really responded well to it, and it really kept us at the forefront when we were closed and we weren't doing openings and things like that. But then also we could sell for like a little workshop online. I believe we did do an art workshop that people paid to go to. But a lot of it was that having that presence, so that when we asked for money, people gave money because they were getting a product out of us still. And it worked really well. We really enjoyed having the time to do something we'd always wanted to do.
Are you talking about the Sheldon or your current organization?
I'm talking about the Sheldon with the history tidbits. Right now, I haven't been working on anything that's outreach. I'm not.
Sure.
Yeah.
The thing about putting together online material and content, that takes staff time. So that does impact your balance sheet. And your profit and loss.
But my staff, we had the salaries through grants and through government, and we didn't have exhibits, and I had exhibit staff that didn't have exhibits to do.
I'm talking about my own staff. So
yeah.
No, it takes time, and that takes away from the other responsibilities, and that there's a cost to that online, and so that really impacts your business model as well.
I guess the question, are people continuing their online programming the way they were during COVID now that they're open? Is that kind of is that kind of where it goes, Addison? Is that?
Could you say that again, please, Dixie?
Is the question kind of along the lines of, are people continuing their online programming the way they were during COVID, even though they're open again now? Is that like stretching resources?
Right. Yeah, I think she was hoping for a discussion about juggling those things, right? Because there's, I remember, how many times, during that first couple of months we heard, we pivoted to, I said it in about a dozen meetings. Yes, we have pivoted to delivery of online content, right? And so now we've never sort of pivoted back away from that at the Alaska State Museum, right? We continue to try and do this, to do everything online, while at the same time now, in some cases, even trying to do it in person as well. But there's that. Now there seems to be sort of an expectation that folks are able to access your content online, and in addition to in person. And I'm just wondering, and I think she was hoping to hear how people juggled that.
I think again, it's sort of like what Emily Edenshaw was saying. You reprioritize, or you change how you're thinking. We reach a whole lot more people online than we do, and in our community, than we do in person. In fact, a lot of people aren't coming in because it's just not, it's not something they want to do. We've got a lot of COVID in our community right now. So the online model, and it's not just online. I think of it as, the 50 objects of history that first the British Museum did, and a couple other museums have done it. We did it. But with the British Museum, they did a radio show, they did a book, they did videos online, and this all was related to this one exhibit. And I think that's kind of what you want to look at is you market and package it all as a unit, and you should be doing that anyway, not just because it's COVID. I mean, that should be kind of how you're looking at it, because your audiences are very different, and you really are reaching a whole lot more people than you would be if you just did it as museum when it opens its doors. And that's part of the resiliency model, and that's part of the getting out beyond our four walls, which was something that in the workshop I did with the 4-acre years ago was all about, and that the Alutiiq did. Get out of, our walls, they kind of enclose us and encapsulate us and keep us centered in this little bubble. And a lot of times we're not really reaching in and knowing what's going on in our community. Whereas if you just break out of those walls and think of yourself as not a physical thing, but as a mental concept more, and start looking, how do you reach out with that mental concept and on your educational thing? And you can make money with the traveling exhibits. We haven't really been charging for traveling exhibits, but you can with the traveling exhibits too.
Yeah, I'll say,
Go ahead,
I'll say,
Addison.
Helen, a couple of 6 weeks ago or something, we were in a relatively safe period for COVID, so we decided we were going to launch it. We're going to do an activity, a lecture here at LAM, and we got it all set up to record so that we could get it put up on our website afterwards. And we figured out exactly how many people we could come in and socially distance them. And we went and we did all the marketing and got the speaker and everything all prepped. And it came down to having the event. And I think we had 10 people show up. And it was in some degree, for some staff members, a bit of a heartbreak. They'd worked so hard on something that they were so committed and passionate about, and they didn't have those people come in. And I starting to think a little bit about when this ends, if it ever ends. I'm sure things are going to be different, but how are we going to start getting people back in to those spaces, back in to seeing those objects? That's the State Museum. That's we're about our collection, and so having people interact with those collections is very important.
Well,
Selena.
And maybe that's not the question. Maybe the question is, how do we get people to interact with the objects, but not necessarily get them back in? So, they in Europe, in Norway, I think it was, but the State Museum there hired a guy to make copies of the collection and created these boxes, these kits with drawers that pulled out, and it was all the different decades in the history of the state of the country, and all these distant artifacts that were replicas, and then those were sent to every school in the state in the country, and they were for different grade levels and stuff. I mean, it's a huge project, but that kind of thing was their concept. Was not everyone's going to get into our building. How do we get the things out to the people? And that kind of builds the interest in seeing the real thing. Oh, I know this thing. I understand it. So I think that's, again, I think our whole paradigm has to shift. And maybe it's things that aren't light sensitive, putting them in store windows downtown, or maybe it's just different. How do we reach out beyond our walls? How do we get out of this mindset that we are four walls that people need to enter? And maybe that's because we need the money, but maybe there's other ways that we can generate the revenue from ticket sales. And that would be, like I said, traveling exhibits, or there's workshops online. But people are really focused on this online access, and they really like it. And if you do any event at the building, it now has to have the complete online component as well. So our town rewired the government spaces so that every meeting, if it's in person, also has an online component over Zoom, and they've got all the technology, and so you can borrow that space to do things so that you too can do it. Anyway.
Well, I'm unlike a lot of you. We don't have a space. I mean, we do, but we don't serve the public in that way. So we've been doing more of our stuff outside. And pre-COVID, we were already transitioning to digital initiatives. But I think in response to Bethany's original question, we just kind of pivoted kind of hard. And it's become this new practice for us in adopting, doing more digital and virtual outreach through the work that we do. So we have cultural interpretive guides. We have a partnership with Salmonberry Tours. So our guides go out, literally outside, and their tours will meet up with our guides along their drive to Matanuska Glacier, because that's where their tour is going. And our guides will be on their van with them, talking about Ahtna history and culture. Sometimes they'll even go to a pullout or to one of the trailheads, and our guides will get out with them and talk about that space and the land. And what we've done to pivot to virtual, what they've done over the last year, they've done extensive research on ideas and virtual and cultural guide interpretive presentations we provide on our YouTube channel now to kind of expand that. So for us, virtual was never a question. It was always, when were we gonna do it? We're just doing it now versus later. And for us, it's simply because our first and foremost priorities are tribal citizens, and they don't all live here. We have some that live in Kenai. And we're not open. Our offices just recently, we went back into shutdown because of the Delta variant. So I've been working remotely from home since last September. I occasionally go into the office to monitor the collections. I will actually, and I've learned how to deal with this. I have actually brought materials home to help digitize, to continue doing my work. So for us, it was more about adopting that new practice. We still do hope to have a physical space. Like, we're currently in development for a culture center. So we're making those steps, but it's not the first and foremost priority. For us, it's about how we're serving our audience. And like I said, our audience is our tribal citizens first. But secondary, it's also about educating the broader public about Ahtna culture and history. And how can we best do that? Right now, it's in the virtual realm. We're hoping down the line, it will be in a physical space. Right now, we do not monetize it. That's kind of an ongoing discussion we have about monetizing Ahtna culture. And it's very problematic for us, and trying to figure out how we're going to do that moving into the future. So Patty, I'm sorry, we don't have a great solution for you. But Museums Alaska, we did do a series of workshops. Are they like the major fundraiser for Museums Alaska? No, but they were profitable. And because they were successful, we're hoping to do that moving into the future and figuring out creative ways to have virtual things like that. We will have a virtual tour of some of our spaces in the future. We do not plan on charging for those things, simply because for us, when we have our physical space in our cultural center, once it's built, it will be mostly about on-site experience and what we're going to provide. So I think that's kind of how we come to terms with it. Yeah, that's all I got.
We charge for our guides. Every time Faith or I, or, well, it's just Faith and I this summer, or actually primarily Faith, jumps on a coach, a premier coach, a grand circle coach, we charge for that. I'm just asking you, I'm not sensing you're going to say yes. You charge for your guide that jumps on the Salmonberry coach, right?
Actually, a lot of the work that the guides do right now is predominantly grant funded, so we do not have to charge them. And we've had discussions with Salmonberry. They understand that it will not remain like this always. But because of the grant funding we have, we don't charge them. Our guides are perfectly paid for and accommodated in the research that they do. Yeah.
All right. We're at 10:49. Does anybody have any last thoughts or words about online versus daily operations?
I wanted to make a comment, state something about what Patty was saying, like with the online stuff, you've got people who are a cost and you're doing these online things for free. And Patty, I think you've got to look at the broader issue. If you're doing things online, with your marketing and your image, and you're doing things that are innovative, that looks good to people who would fund you. And that, I think, is how we got the NEH funding to fund for all that staff, was that we were doing innovative online work. And we weren't charging for it, but we did end up getting $57,000 because of it. So I think that's the other thing, is that the broader picture is when you're generating all this social capital, basically, that the funders notice that.
All right, final question or final discussion of topic. Collections insurance. In light of shrinking budgets, a board may see the elimination of collections insurance as a way to save money. If a museum or cultural center burns down, the objects are irreplaceable. So how can we insure something that cannot be replaced? And this question came from Patty. Did I get to the heart of what you were faced with?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So we pay $25,000 a year in corporate liability insurance. And one of my new board members said, "Oh, well, let's just, you know, if everything burns down, you can't replace the Pinzon bar, you can't replace the Aaron steamer, you can't replace all of these items. So what's the $25,000 for? Anyway, I just wanted to throw this out as a discussion topic too. If anybody else is, obviously I'm opposed to eliminating collections insurance, but it's a topic that boards are discussing. Well, at least mine is.
Has anyone else experienced this situation?
Patty, just an idea, but maybe this is a place for you to go to the government and ask them to step in and pay that cost if they would support you that way, or
That's
go
exactly
to
how it started, because the government, the city of Valdez owns. Now get this. Now I'm saying this out loud because the city manager said this out loud. City manager said to me, well, we're not going to pay the insurance because if everything burns down, we'll build you a new museum.
Mm-hmm. Well, remember that things can be recovered from disasters. They, you know, that's something I've done a lot of. So they can be recovered, but it's more expensive to do conservation work. Yeah, yeah. I would find, you know, that's one possibility, is to try to find somebody or a couple, you know, a few somebodies who could take that on as a donation to the museum. But if it's the city's collection, they should be paying for it. Definitely. And does that include?
That's exactly right. And that's what the board member said to the city manager. It's your collection, you should be paying for it. Well, we don't. We're self-insured and we wouldn't pay for that. Because if it burns down, we'll just build you a new museum.
Yeah.
Anybody else have that conversation? Not a fun one. Oh, City of Palmer pays? Thank you very much, Selena.
Yeah, the museum only pays for the nonprofit insurance and the staff and the building. All the collections is done by the City of Palmer because the City of Palmer owns the collection.
Ketchikan. Good to know. Palmer and Ketchikan. Yep. Good deal.
Yeah, and I think it's high. It's crazy high too. I'm pretty sure.
Well, the city of Valdez only has a $1 million policy. If any of their buildings burn down, they'll just rebuild them. They're not responsible.
I was like, City of Palmer's individual insurance was $1 million.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, Patty.
Yeah.
I just want to give you a hug.
So anyway, $25,000 is a chunk of our annual operating budget, since it's only $650,000. You know what I mean?
Well, what was happening at the borough was the borough was paying, basically they pay a borough-wide insurance, and then we had a rider for the collection, and it wasn't too bad. The rider was $10,000 for a $3 million collection. But the borough was covering our contents, all contents up to a certain value. And then we paid that, and then they also paid for the rider, but it wasn't $25,000. So I don't know if you can get in a different way, if you can look at maybe a different way of insuring. But it covered slip and fall and
all encompassing. That's a whole corporate liability. So yeah, it's a big.
So the $25,000 isn't your collection; it's corporate liability, board liability, slip and fall.
It's everything. It's just all in part.
So they did all the borough buildings under one policy, and then the rider for the art rider for us. But we just paid a portion, a percentage of the entire. So it wasn't too bad.
That 40% of the survey said they had no collections insurance. Huh.
Yeah.
I'll say it's probably because you guys there's so many places, it sounds like, that have support. Is there anybody out there like me, who we don't get any money from anywhere. You know, we don't have a borough, we don't have a city. And how do you fund that? I mean, we have insurance, but how do you, anybody out there that doesn't have any of that support in any method or way, there's no city, there's no government, there's no other place to fund. Where do you get your insurance and how do you fund it? I mean, I'm just interested in other people and how they do it.
Actually, I can give you my insurance agent's contact information. It's I'll send it to you, Sue.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we have insurance, but we don't have, we insure, I mean, we have 6 buildings, we got a lot of land, and we have liability, and we have directors and officers.
It's through Guide One. I'll send it to you.
Okay. And there's we did a big brochure, the conservators in private practice years ago. We did a brochure on insuring collections and how to do it and what, and that might be online now. I can double check, but we also found that, you know, much of our collection doesn't have much value. It's like $500 a piece or whatever, and those things could be included in just the general contents of the building. And it's only the high value things that, like 25,000 or above, you know, a chill cap blanket or something that's got high value, that then would need the rider. And then the other thing about the insurance is, are you insuring things as they travel to your museum or travel away from your museum? What about other people's things that come into your museum? You know, loans. How do you do that in the insurance? But we have to deal with that a lot as art conservators. So there was a brochure established about the best places to get the art policies.
I'm wondering if any museums have had to use their insurance and maybe have examples on how their insurance helped them after a disaster. And that would be something that you could then go to a city with and be like, well, if this happens, this is what the insurance money has helped with. So I don't know if any museum in Alaska has had that, or if we need to look elsewhere outside of Alaska, but that might help.
I can speak to that. So we had really good insurance. And after the 2018 earthquake, I can say roughly the insurance paid about $400,000 worth of recovery efforts, because everything in the building, from the collection to the exhibit furniture, was covered. And a big chunk of that repair money was needed for exhibit repair work in the Smithsonian Gallery, because the glass panels had to be shipped from Canada. They don't make them. I think Canada and China are the only 2 places in the world those glass panels are made. And we had to fly people up to take all the objects out. I mean, it was a huge project. And then we also had some mount making and some artwork that had to be replaced, but, you know, a small amount. But it was a lot more regarding, I was surprised. I had no idea that the exhibit furniture was included in the policy. And so it was really great. And I highly recommend it up here for earthquake purposes. And I don't know, Patty, if you saw my comment, it's never fire or total loss. It'll be the partial loss, because a fire doesn't destroy everything, as Helen mentioned. It's usually the water damage that occurs from sprinklers or from firefighters, and water you can recover from, as we all know, because we've all had leaks in our collections. We've all had leaks in our exhibitions. We've all dealt with that. For so many years, we've used mostly our insurance for, we haven't claimed against it. It was just easier just to pay the money outright. But in that earthquake situation, I mean, I don't know what we would have done. I don't know where that money would have come from. And especially now with COVID and with revenues so far down, I mean, what could we have done? Would we have just closed the exhibit permanently until fundraising could have occurred? I mean, I'm not sure. So I think it's important for people to remember that it's not for the catastrophic loss that you're insuring for. It's for theft, it's for vandalism, it's for accidental damage that occurs in shipping or even through handling. earthquakes, water. I mean, we all have water damage. Leaks are just so common. Pipes burst. And so those are the times when the insurance is really important, because you don't want to have to pay for the repair to a ceiling in an exhibition space, because often that insurance is included. It's not just the collection, it's the associated exhibition and storage furniture as well.
And I can add that, I've been to a lot of disasters in museums, and, we had 3 roof collapses from snow one year in Minnesota at museums. Fires and floods were pretty common, electrical fires, and we never had total loss. We just had a lot of structural loss to the exhibit furniture or the structure. One museum, the coffee pot burned up, the instant turn-off coffee pot burned up in the offices. The smoke went up into the vent and deposited soot on the entire stored collection. And we were cleaning it. There were 3 of us cleaning it for over a year. That was a very expensive response that the insurance paid for entirely. So, they didn't lose anything in terms of the physical plant or the collection, but they had to get that soot off of everything. And there was the Alaska State Museum had a similar thing when their boiler blew up or had a back blow and put soot on the entire collection. So that's the kind of thing that you end up having, and you're like, how do I deal with this? And that's when the insurance steps in.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Monica, for your comments there. So we're at 11:03, time to wrap up our session here. Does anybody have any final comments or questions about insurance? Not hearing any, I'll just say thank you to everybody for participating and coming into this and talking and making it a lively session. And thank you, Dixie, for your help facilitating things. And hopefully we'll get an opportunity to do it again next year.